Hello, today is March 25th, 2020, and the time is 7:21 p.m. I don't know how many takes I've done trying to make this video. I guess it's a little bit more difficult for me to make than I realized. So I'm going to give this another shot. So this video is about a chapter in my life. Feels like a lifetime ago. And for those of you who have been following my story, even prior to the 7-year nonsense that I've been dealing with, or was dealing with out west, you'll understand, and this will be kind of an update for those who know that story. And I'm going to briefly go over this story for those of you who don't know anything about it. I do talk about this in a few of my older videos, and it was kind of brought up over the 7 years that I've been dealing with this nonsense, or was dealing with this nonsense, as it kind of ties in. And it also ties in with my meeting with my mother. So I guess my mother had saved some mail from about 21 years ago. And there's this little bit, it was a little bundle. And there was, in this little bundle, there was a letter from the woman that I married. And there was also a couple other letters from people in her neighborhood where she grew up that reached out to me, but I never got them. And I guess they expressed, they wanted to be in touch, but never got those letters. So anyway, I had this letter from her, hadn't seen, didn't even know about it. 21 years old, and it kind of reminded me of those stories of, you hear about people in like World War I or World War II, say a soldier sends a letter to someone, a loved one or a parent, and it went missing, and then the letter resurfaces like decades later. It kind of felt like that. And the letter, the envelope was aged with time, and I remember holding it, not knowing what it contained, and the date on that letter would have been about a week, or within the week after I had left over there, and I never got it until this month. So I'm going to just briefly go over this whole story, for those of you who don't know it. So it was in the late 90s. I had met the woman that I would end up marrying. She was from Central Europe, and our cultures were kind of, well, they are very similar. And when I had found her, she was in a corner crying, and I was doing personal, private type of security at the time, and didn't expect to ever come across that scene. And long story short, she ended up telling me that she got involved unknowingly in some global sex trade thing, and I intervened as best as I could. And she was telling me that they took her papers and everything, and well, we got married 6 months later. I had, between that, I had sent her back to her country, and I don't know how many weeks later, I guess this agency had sent her back here to Canada, which I was surprised. And well, so that's how we met. We were married, and about several months later we went to her country, kind of like for a honeymoon. Her sister was getting married, meet her family and everything. During that summer, had some difficulties with my mother and her husband, which didn't help our situation. Her and I were perfect together, but it just seemed like life around us was just interfering large. And I'm not going to get into all that, but I did learn later that my mother had wrote some letters or a letter to immigration speaking badly about me, which impacted my marriage, which impacted the woman that I married, and it went on this chain reaction. So I ended up living there for a couple of years, almost a couple of years, and I had left February of 1999 back to my country in Canada, and the idea was to bring her over. And before I left, I was told that I'm leaving her to the wolves, the agency, and I'm not sure if any particular family members had anything to do with this. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate, and I'm not going to make an accusation or even imply anything. I just don't have enough information to make an informed conclusion, and to be quite honest, it doesn't really matter anymore. So I had come back, and then by September of 1999, I had called. I hadn't heard from her, I think, in about 3 or 4 weeks, which was completely unusual. I'd called her parents' place, and her mother had told me on the phone that Interpol was looking for her. Now I'm freaking out. I don't know what's going on. I'm panicking, and I ended up flying over there to find out what's going on, and be with my wife, and nobody knew that her family had her in the house until I got there. And well, I talked to her briefly on the phone twice, and the first time I talked to her, she wanted to see me, and I'm not going to say who was in the background, but they were saying, no, you're not seeing him, it's, blah, whatever. And I said, and she was literally on the phone, it sounded like she was having a breakdown, and so I said, listen, I'll call you at that number the next day, which I did, and we just talked briefly, and again, someone in the background was coaching her on what to say, and she cried and everything else. So anyway, I ended up leaving, and I gave myself 10 years to find out what happened, to help her, and I told everyone it'd be 10 years. Anyway, 10 years was 2009, and 2009 came and went, and here I am today, type of thing. And in 2011, someone had told me that she never forgot about me, which could mean anything. But I did reach out to her twice and never got a reply, and the person who had told me this was surprised, and the last thing I heard was whatever happened to her in the past there, she just wants to leave it behind her, which I respect. By the mid-2000s, I never anticipated her and I to be together or anything, and obviously by 2011, a lot of time had gone by and everything. So anyway, that's the history on that. So if you fast forward to March of 2020, I'm holding this letter from 21 years ago, and I had kind of mixed emotions. Not devastated at all, but there was sadness there. And I read through the letter. In parts of it, I'm completely perplexed at, but if she was being coached on what to say, I kind of get it. But there are parts there I could see that were her words, so I'm going to try to read some parts to you, and keep in mind she knew English fairly well, really well, but consider that she was probably really emotional, really upset when she was writing this. It was handwritten, and I have a hard time trying to read because, like, she has usually had very neat handwriting, but you can tell that she was upset just how it was written, and the way she put the English together. So when I read it, it's gonna sound really broken, but it considered it's her second language, and she was upset. So I'm gonna read this some lines. So she begins the letter addressing me, and she writes here, I think about how we were living before. You remember how we have problem to stay together. Because I think about it, I love you. We have together good times too, but the bad times were much worse. So basically, what she was referring to was how we met, the circumstances we met, and the agency dealing with my mother and her husband on the Canadian side, and then dealing with her parents on her side. They had, as I said, I don't know who was involved in what and how she got to where she is. But just on a side note, she was, when I met her, during the time that I knew her, she was a registered nurse for sick kids and specialized in neurology. So that was actually her profession. And so how she got tied up with this other nonsense is beyond me. So we had my family, her family, we had this agency, and we were struggling trying to survive. And her and I together, it was wonderful. I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, when you're newly married, everything is great, but you know, there was something different about this. When we met, and I'm not the type of person to buy into this kind of stuff, but we knew each other before we met. It was weird. And anyway, I don't want to get into that whole story, so I'm just going to read a little bit more. I believe you found someone who is much better than I am. So I'm not exactly sure if she was implying that I was cheating on her. I wasn't. I never did. And in fact, as I've stated, aside from messing around with a handful of women over the past 21 years, nothing really serious. I haven't been with a woman or in a relationship since her. She's implying that I would find someone better. Yeah. As I've written her back. I don't know if she'll get it or not, but I said to her, I said, there'd be no one better than her. And anyway, I'll read a little bit more. I'm very mad that you called Interpol and someone else. So for some reason, she thinks that I had called Interpol on her, and I didn't. And the person that she referenced was someone in her community. Now, and she was mad that I had talked to other people trying to find out what happened to her, and sharing information because I was concerned. I had no idea. And she's saying that she's mad at me for doing that. Now, one, I never called Interpol. Her mother told me they called Interpol. So I don't know if this is some sort of miscommunication or something deliberate. I don't know. But just to clear that part up. She writes, I am not the same person like before. Considering it's only been within the days, I'm not exactly sure what that means, or if that implies whatever had happened to her, or I don't know. But I'm not going to speculate. She's saying here that you make me very humiliated. And she's referring to my contacting other people to find out what happened to her, and I guess telling them what the situation was. She writes, "Sorry for my English. If you have something to tell me, write me or call me." And she gave me 2 weeks to do so. So obviously I didn't make the 2-week mark, and as I said, some of the stuff that she was writing there, I don't know if there was some influence to that. You have to understand the Central and Eastern European culture is a lot different than here, and my trying to find out what happened to her and help her, I could understand in that culture that it would be embarrassing. It'd be embarrassing anywhere, but I don't blame her for what she found herself in. She made a mistake, and I kind of get how that kind of came about, and I'm not going to get into her personal life or her family's or anything. So yeah, I guess seeing that letter gave me the rest of the closure. I mean, there was already established closure, especially in 2011, but it was just a missing piece of the puzzle that I didn't even know was missing. I didn't even know existed. And I did write her back. And I simply just explained to her, addressed some of the stuff that she had wrote in the letter, and basically just summarized my life afterwards. I didn't get into too much detail about this past 7-year nonsense with these idiots out here, but I did write her. I don't know, I doubt she'll get it, but I had sent 2 copies out to 2 different locations, and I hope someday she does get that and reads it. So yeah, that's basically finishes that part of that chapter, or however you want to put it, I don't know. I just can't believe it took me so many takes to make this video about this letter. I don't feel at all distraught about it or upset or anything. I don't know. It's probably affecting me inside more. Anyway, that's it. So, you know the story, and for those of you who have been following my story for 20 years or more, there you go. So, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.